People think when you magically arrive, like you have best-selling books, you're on stage, it's easy. Well, there were years and years of obscurity. In Toastmasters clubs, before I ever got paid a dime to speak professionally, I was practicing long before I got to a paid stage. And I mention that because we live in this instant world of everything. People think that they can find a hack on a YouTube video or a TikTok video and they're an expert. It takes years. It's called wisdom.
Right.
Your life work, if it's a decade, 2 decades, I've been in the industry now for 25 plus years.
Necessarily those of WKTV Community Media.
Hello, West Michigan. This is Grand Tap Media Business TV. My name is Pamela Keim, your host. The spirit of the show is to introduce West Michigan to all the businesses, nonprofits, individuals that will help us thrive in our lives. We are with Tony Rubleski, part 2 interview, and we're going to get right to it. He is going to be talking about business coaching, what he's learned about successful people, and yeah, that's about it. That's what I want to know. Tony,
well,
welcome
thank
to the
you very
town.
much. We're back.
He is a best-selling author. That's why he is here today. He has his new book out, Positive Disruption. You probably will look up Tony Rubleski, look up me. You'll start seeing this everywhere. But this launched out on Wednesday. He's been all over the country. I don't know, possibly the world. I don't know. I know that you go all over the country. Mm-hmm. This book is to make a positive disruption in people's lives and business. But and that is part 1 interview. We go into details about the book, the cover, what he's been doing, what he wants, the impact he wants to have with people when they read this book. But I want to talk about something that a lot of people, when they were at your event in Traverse City, what the heck are people doing since since COVID? We got back pre-COVID and post-COVID. And also, what are these people that we stand on the stage that are doing very well? What are they doing that we're not doing, and what we could do differently? And do they have a lot of problems? If you could just share that with us, Tony.
Wow, that's a multi-part question.
We want to know that they're suffering a little bit.
Because
they put out in the world that everything is fabulous, but they do tell us their problems a little bit. But everybody wants to reach their level. Everybody would love to be on stage and be as comfortable as you are.
Okay.
You get a lot of people. How do I do what you do? And you probably look at them. Do you really want to go through what I have gone through to be where I am? But you make it look so easy. But you're around these business people. You help them. You mentor them, and some of them even they mentor you. I mean, what are they like? What do they do different?
I think it's a very powerful, deep question because there's a lot of layers to it. Let me throw a couple of ideas back at you.
First of all, tell us who you are, real quick.
Well, again, I'm Tony Rubleski, and I
hangs around with successful people.
call West Michigan home. I think if anything is that they're really not different, but they have a different mindset. And a lot of it is they're not afraid to move forward and to take criticism and have trolls talk about them, to have haters, as they say in the online space.
Right.
And not because they're pushing to provoke, some do, but not all of them do that. I think the biggest misconception is that they have the perfect life and they're like this on this pedestal. What I often find is the higher up the ladder, the more adversity they've usually had.
Right.
Tony Robbins, the other Tony R, I call him, would say that success leaves clues.
Yes.
What I've been trying to write about the last several years, and the book before this was called Trailblazers. I interviewed lots of leaders and found characteristics of success they left is that a few of them were persistence. They hear no a lot. It doesn't surprise me when I talk with them, some of the opportunities they get, doesn't surprise me there, and some of the ones they don't, I'm like, you're kidding me. You would think it'd be easier. But they have issues too. And many times they're more in the limelight, so they have to have entourages, they have more people they have to engage with. I call it more lawyers, because if they have a bigger organization or they're out doing things, they have to be careful they don't get sued. False allegations are pretty common. And it's knowing that you have to have thick skin. One of my mentors said to me years ago, it's like 19, 20 years back, he said, so you're going to go out and do writing and speaking full time. He said, Rubleski, just be careful because the higher up the ladder you go, the more bullseye will be on your butt.
Right.
He had a different word for that, but we're on we're in the network here in the studio, but it starts with an A. But he wasn't kidding. And I think the biggest thing that happens too is when you're out pushing, and especially with social media, you're out there, is people have these very, I wouldn't say shallow, just very slice of life conceptions of who you are. You don't show everything on social media typically. And
even you were in Vegas and stuff. Yeah. You probably saw a lot with your success there, and coming back because your family's here and whatever. Yeah. I get that. But, you know, what did people think when you finally were able to do Vegas, and you're in Vegas and doing all these events, they're like, oh, you're successful.
Yeah.
Do really, let's get back down to it. Does people really know what it takes
I
to
don't
put on events? Do they have any idea what the responsibility of all of that is? A lot of moving parts?
I don't think they do.
They think it's all glamorous,
Fellow,
don't they?
yeah, fellow meeting planners, you doing meetings and events too, you get, it's like, holy cow, it's a lot of work. But you're also, when you're in the middle of it, once you commit to a date and you invite people, the show goes on. And we found that out a couple years ago when we did our annual event. We moved it 4 times in 11 months to do it during 2020.
Yeah.
So I've been through that kind of crazy train where, you know, you say, we're going to keep persisting. But I think the biggest thing is it's a lot of work. And people think when you magically arrive, like you have best-selling books, you're on stage, it's easy. Well, there were years and years of obscurity. In Toastmasters clubs, before I ever got paid a dime to speak professionally, I was practicing long before I got to a paid stage. And I mention that because we live in this instant world of everything. People think that they can find a hack on a YouTube video or a TikTok video and they're an expert. It takes years. It's called wisdom.
Right.
Your life work, you know, if it's a decade, 2 decades, I've been in the industry now for 25 plus years. I know a lot, but I'm also still learning a lot.
Right.
So I think the other aspect that people don't realize is that we all have blind spots, Pam. Even these famous people have blind spots. That's why many of them get embezzled from. They make sometimes poor decisions.
They
Not for
trust
me to
you.
judge.
Yeah, they
I've
trust.
made mistakes in my life, but you hopefully learn the lesson. You move on from it. It's a small chapter of your life. And the challenge I see is some of these folks are telling the same story from 30 years ago. It's like, what have you done the last 29 years that you've changed for the better? Share the changing for the better
notice that
stories.
too? I noticed that
Yeah,
too.
because sometimes I just go, I don't want to hear about your divorce from 20 years ago anymore.
Right.
Tell me about like how your family's doing now, or what new business or entrepreneurship projects you're working on that are helping the community. Let's talk about more present things. So I think your multi-part question is, they put their pants on the same way.
Yeah.
They have a lot of the same fears you and I do. And when it comes to finances, people think success is only money. It's extremely important, but I'm getting more people coming to me, leaders that want me to coach them, saying, how do I find more autonomy with my life? Harmony. How do I have a successful company, but also not be a slave to where I don't have any time off or take a vacation?
Is there such a thing?
If you engineer it, yes, there is.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Again, it takes work because we're very habitual. And if you have expectations with your team or your family, and all of a sudden you want to radically change it, they're going to look at you like you're from another planet. So there's also the mindset to be prepared of knowing what you're walking into. Last 5 years since I moved back to West Michigan, I have some family and friends that I just can't connect with this as well. And there's new family and friends, or I would say friends particularly, that have come into my world that I resonate with better because I changed a lot the last few years.
Is there a consistent that you notice that there's something, like you've been around these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're behind closed doors, you're at meetings with them. Is there anything that you would, if you had to be asked this at the end, you know, what is there the consistency of some of these successful, that they still have an issue with what?
I call imposter syndrome.
I hear that a lot.
And it's
Tell
a
us
very
what that
common
is.
term where they see themselves, you know, as a successful best-selling author, a CEO, or you know, influencer is now the new term on social media for those that have millions of followers. But when they're privately by themselves, they go, oh my God, if the world knew I had issues, or I had a bad issue growing up as a child, or I'm going through divorce, or I have an addiction, I think I have an addiction. Their inner dialogue is battling with the public perception of who the world sees them as, and sometimes they think they might be a fraud behind the scenes. And that's common with all of us.
Well, have you gone through that
I've gone through it a
yourself?
few times in my career, and it's usually been when there's been a major stressor point. I can think of 2 of them in particular. I went through a divorce many years ago.
Okay.
And for that year or 2 while that was occurring, that's extremely traumatic. Many of Americans statistically are going to go through one.
Right.
I remember taking the stage in LA in front of like 400 people and thinking, boy, if they realized I was in the middle of a divorce, they would
Almost
think,
complete failure
and I'm
of
up there,
marriage.
I'm up there giving them advice or trying to teach them on how to be successful in business, but my personal life's a train wreck. I had to battle through, you know what? I said before going on stage, they brought you here for a reason. Stick to your lane, share what you can,
Right.
and keep your personal life off that stage. They don't care. So I had to override. It wasn't imposter syndrome, it was a real challenge in my life to continue to do my productive work in the public sector. And now with social media, everyone having a phone and cameras all over the
Keeping it
place.
forever.
Yeah, so
Well, what do you do with that? You have 8 books, right? This
Yeah.
is your number. This is your number 8. The state Positive Disruption one came out in 2020, which was a bad time to launch a book, but you did it. And then, of course, this one. What do you, in your past books you've written, do you ever look and say, God, what was I thinking? I mean, because you got Trailblazers, you have Mind Capture, all these things. I'm like, because you're older and wiser, and would you have done? I mean, do you look back and say, man, I was so off, I was wrong? But at the time, you did it, and you thought that was the best advice for somebody. But then to come back, am I making sense here?
Yeah, I think it's when you have if you continue to push and you have a body of work, okay, you look back and sometimes in those 50,000 thoughts a day, you go, oh my gosh, but you also go, well, if I didn't write that, I don't get to the next progression.
I know.
There's snapshots. I've talked to like musician friends of mine. If you look at their albums, that they're writing a lot about the things that were going on in their life at that time. And you can fast forward through their catalog and say they were going through this, they were happy, then they wrote these songs, they were down, they were confused, they didn't know what direction. And it's the same with writing books. And I look at it and go, that was a snapshot of my thought process at that time. I'm not embarrassed by it. I just go, that's where I was at. And you see typically growth. I'm in the self-help industry, the nonfiction, so it's more personal development. You see the growth through that. And I look back at the first book, 20 some odd years, the manuscript, I go, I was early 30s, my thought process was maybe simpler. And you fast forward 20 years, you go, thank God I'm still writing. I'm in the game. I enjoy it still. There's been times where I took off months without writing. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. You go through those dark nights of the soul. But I think it's very natural for anyone that's in creativity work, puts it out in the public, to go, well, it's out there now, especially the last 15 years with the internet. Everything is now digitally online forever.
I know. Everything you've ever said, and you don't know today, people that will have their phones on. You could be sitting at a football game having a nice discussion with your sibling or your sister. Now I realize the guy behind you could be reporting their kid on and recording you. It's scary, because with David being a CEO, it's like he would say, we never talk business out in the public. We keep it behind closed doors, and only because he had his board member. You know what I'm saying? You don't talk about things. I'm like, oh, okay. So that's a whole different world. Could you imagine if your parents had those people that have the cameras inside their house to make sure that nobody breaks in, or they didn't know if their dogs are okay? Could you imagine your parents having that when you were growing up? I couldn't even imagine the surveillance. I go, oh my goodness.
Well, I think a big thing too is it comes down to discretion. That something I would advise and throw out as strong recommendations to anyone under 30 is, be careful, because your emotions, you're posting things up with emotion. You may look back in a month or a week or a day and go, what was I thinking? Take it down if it's bothering you. But there is also a public, you have to have discretion to somewhat know the best you can what you want out there and what you don't. And I knew 20 years ago when I became a writer, I thought, my world's going to become an open book. I did not foresee a few years later social media would come on the scene, and that continues to be a growing area where people are relying on information and data and opinions. And I go back to, I'd rather have lived and pursued things versus waiting and worrying about what other people think. Everyone's got a hidden secret or a hidden tragedy or something that bothers them, because we're human. Some will tell you, some will hide it. Some will judge you. Some will act holier than thou. And I look at them and go, do you have a halo? Are you perfect? Because you're not. And sometimes I can look through someone in a meeting, not to be cocky, and just say, well, you've got issues too. And I'm not going to let your opinion.
Right? Somebody's got a chip. We don't know what it is, but it's like,
what are you hiding? Because some people are hiding, and some people are hiding it really, really well. Some people talk about it more, and some people are projecting their hostility to their own issues onto you. Okay, studying personal development, I can tell you one of the big things I've learned is not to take things personally, Pamela. I have negative book reviews. People don't like me. They think I'm cocky or he's a showboat. It's all right. It doesn't bother me.
Put my quote in here?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
Submitted quotes. You had to decide which was good. And it's fine, interesting, because that was you allowed everybody kind of have submit quotes for this one, and then you decided which ones are going to be. But I'm sure there's people that didn't get their quote in the book, and they're kind of like. And
we always thank them for at least taking the time and being a part of it. We can't get everybody in because of space. The thing I want to throw out there, I don't think I've done this in a television format interview, is that people are always going to say things about you, and you have to have that thick skin to say, you know what, you really can't always care what people think. But let me peel this back, because you hear that in a lot of other interviews. You have to know the right people to care about their opinion. What is their intent? Are they a family member? Are they a spouse? Are they someone you work with? Are they a coach? Your boss? You have to care about what they say. There's a difference. A lot of people, soundbite world we live in, don't talk about, you have to care to a degree with your inner circle, because that's your inner circle, your team. But if you have people you have no idea that are online, I call them the internet trolls, making comments, they're much more bolder behind the keyboard of their phone than they are face-to-face with you. Okay?
Right.
The old world,
They're
you'd go
real brave
outside
at
and you'd
home
figure it
their
out. You
computer,
know, you
right.
go out in the old schoolyard and you brawl over this back in the, you know, the pre-internet age. I'm not advocating violence, but I'm just saying it was a different time. But with social media, here's another thing. A lot of people that have very, very strong, out-of-control egos don't go on social media. They're too worried what people say about them. They take it too personal. A lot of people on social media never make a comment. They're afraid. Not for me to judge them, it's just the data shows it. So I'm advocating in these books, when I do teachings live around the world, is get that idea out there. Have the confidence, like when you were that little 7-year-old, to throw the idea out there. Or ask the question, why have we always done it that way? Or you know what, why not try the idea? You've got nothing to lose. We're not here for very long. This time goes really, really quick. Our
And you and
earthly clock.
we can attest to that because
And I just say,
we're getting
you know,
up there.
People ask me, why do you do the coaching? Here it is. I'm in the regret management business.
You know,
I want
that's
my
the new
clients to
thing.
say, you know what? I have less regrets because you pushed me, you showed me possibilities, you maybe talked me out of some things that gave me a different viewpoint to say, what, maybe we need to caution that there. But the regret management business, other coaches have said that. I'm not the first to say that. But I know that when they bring me in, they're looking to overcome some of their fears and doubts, to keep the enthusiasm maybe their staff doesn't see. When they're leading from the front and privately they're in the office scared to death, that happens a lot too. They can't go out and tell their rank and file that they're going through their own issues, or maybe they have something in their personal life going on. They have to put on that leadership role. And the personal life will still crash in. We all have personal lives, Pamela.
Well, yes.
But they also, coaches go to coaches. Best example, Tiger Woods, the great golfer. He had golf coaches. You would think Tiger Woods needs a coach? Hello.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
You look at some of the top NFL players of all time, NBA, any major sports, they have coaches still when they're pros. Some of them are more, they're performance coaches, some are more the mechanics coaches, some are weight training, nutrition coaches, some are spiritual coaches. But to me, life is about continually learning and growing. You're always changing. Someone's watching this interview, they've changed from the minute they watched it till maybe a little bit later, they've maybe had a new idea or they've got something that happens. Life is not static, and a lot of people are still operating as if things are going to stay the flat line same. They're not. 2020,
There's too many variables
the
in
last 3
everything.
years told us everything can change on a dime.
On a
So the
dime.
plans you may have gripped on, like with that death grip, you may have to let go and go, you know, I have to have some flexibility because it's not all in my hands.
And well, that's me. And you have to know, you have to have the wisdom to know this is out of my hands. What am I going to do? Who am I now in this situation? And that's how it is. But I do a lot of, I don't know, soul searching or whatever. But I will tell you that people will say the biggest regret that I have is that I cared about what people thought. And you know how people used to say, a businessman will say, my regret is I didn't spend more time with my family than, I wish I would have spent more time. Never say, I wish I would have spent more time in my office. You know, and that's been going on for years. But overall, as a human experience, for all the people, that their biggest regret is that they cared about what people, you know, what other people's thought. And you understand that people move through your life and go, and the people that you were worried about what they thought years ago, you don't even hang out with anymore.
Well,
and that is the root away. That is the truth. As people get older, that's why I do believe you need to have older people around you to emphasize that. You are not going to be with the people you are around, you know, family aside.
Well,
in 5-10 years.
Well, Jim Rohn, who was a great business philosopher, Coach Tony Robbins, me and millions of other people before he passed away, it was like 9 or 10 years ago, used to say that there's seasons of life.
Right.
And you go through winter seasons that are tough. Okay, I look at 2020 to 2022, that was a winter season for the world. Like, we're trying to figure out what's going on here. We're in the winter. Hopefully we go out into spring where there's optimism again. Human nature and our emotions go through those cycles or those seasons. And you're going to have some points in your life where you're in the summertime, you're enjoying everything's hitting out of the park. Fall, you're enjoying the harvest. Life's going good, and all of a sudden, winter arrives. Count on it. If you're given the gift of maybe 70, 80, 90, or 100 years, you're going to go through a lot of seasons, and you get wisdom from it. And you're a little bit calmer because you've seen this before. May have different nuances or different shades, but you can go, I can kind of see where we're heading here. I've been through this before.
Well,
we'll be okay.
And you could say, I don't I don't want to go through that again, but I did learn. It's not like, you want to go through a tragedy or whatever. I don't want to go through what happened 9/11 again, for example, in our lifetime, right?
For sure.
And I don't want to see that again. But what I learned, who I was in it, and who I've been through COVID. Thank you for pretty much saving me for most of COVID lockdown. Having you as a resource on my phone, calling you, which I did all the time. All right, we want to get back to business. All right, so what is an average day for you? I mean, people look and they have so much time. They work from home. We all have this regret. We don't get enough done by 3 o'clock. You struggle with that. How much work should I do? Tell me on average? Can you help us out here?
It will have some variation points if people have children out or you have older kids, you work from home.
Season.
But I would say that your highest, best use of time, when is your peak productivity. Mine's morning. Usually the coffee's flowing. I do my gratitude list, my meditations in the morning. I know that optimal time from about 8 to about noon, that window, that 4 hours where I get my most creativity, my writing done, emails, messaging, that is my optimal time. The afternoon is more lighter for me where I'm doing follow-up phone calls, some other emails. But the highest creative work I don't do in the afternoon. I know my body clock and my cycles.
You start to break down, I think.
It's just I'm just not as it's not my it's not my best lane or wheelhouse in the afternoon to be creating or writing. I'm more like, okay, now we go into activity mode. So it's knowing your schedule. It's having good daily habits. And knowing that if you fall off the wagon, it's okay to get back on. Everyone thinks you have to work out 5 times a week and you have to always do it. And if you miss a day or two, it's okay. Just don't take 2 months off. Then it's going to be harder.
It is going to be
But
harder.
it's knowing your peak energy cycles. It's also knowing that your habits, I look at how you start the day and how you end the day. The bookends is extremely important. And a lot of people just hit the ground running. They start looking at their phone. They're in reactionary mode. The kids are running around. Maybe you get up a half hour earlier and you do some reading. You do some journaling. Maybe you do some meditations. You read your Bible, whatever faith book you're into. You do that. So you attack the day with a good sense of grounding versus reacting. You're proactively moving into it. Catch that?
Good. Okay. So now that your book is out, it went out on a Wednesday. We did part 1 interview, more details about the book. But what I wanted to ask you, what do you want people to get from it? Pick it off the shelf, and what would you like people to get from reading this book?
2 things. To think and to write down what they're really thinking. From here. Not always the logic, oh my God, I can't do that. Just get quiet, sit down and listen to the questions that prompt you, what you're hearing from your intuition, your other self, they call it. Some people call it the Holy Spirit. But you literally listen to yourself and not what everyone else in the external world is telling you is the way it has to be. My best ideas come when I'm sometimes just relaxing, listening to music, I'm taking a walk, and a meditation doesn't always hit me like, oh, there's this answer from the sky. But sometimes when you settle yourself down, this is proven throughout the world, throughout history, the ideas flow because you shut the mind down. The mind's always talking to you.
It is. And
it's that monkey
self-talk.
voice.
Yes.
And when you can shut it down and be calmer, all of a sudden the idea drops. People call it a variety of things, but until you deliberately tell yourself, I need to shut the mind down, not shut it off, but quiet the mind, the best ideas are there. So.
And I want you to share with our our audience, businesses are looking out there, looking for their calendars, looking ahead in 2023 now. All right. I mean, what can Tony Rubleski do for them to, not to say, I got the greatest business plan, but what you can come in, kind of look at their leadership and maybe motivate them to maybe even think out the side, decide out of the box, positive disruption, what you share with us.
I think if anything, I'll give you an example. When companies will bring me in to train their whole team, everybody,
there you go.
let's say it's 300 employees, is that we want to listen to you. We need your ideas. We want you to feel safe that you can share ideas to help improve the company, and we'll listen to you. People want to be heard, Pamela.
I know.
They really want to be heard. And I see lots of CEOs, we're listening to our team. No, they're not.
They're only listening to you.
No, they're not. And I sometimes will talk myself out of a client project because the leadership is totally doing lip service. They're not listening. I'm like, I'm not coming here to do an hour rah-rah talk and wasting your time and 400 people's. Not doing it. If you want someone that will do a little bit of homework and actually listen and engage your team and then give you feedback, pro and con, then maybe I'm your guy. Because they all say we want to keep our employees. Well, then listen to them. Acknowledge the fact that they're valuable too, and make it safe for the employees. Say, you know what, I can share ideas now because I have talents and ideas too.
You do open that up, and I think that that's a really good idea. Somebody that's outside of the dynamics of the business, where you're not competing with each other. If the boss thinks you're saying, he likes you more, to have somebody like you come in and give me if I was there, give me a little bit of encouragement. Especially when you say that's a very good idea. Now, how will you? Now let's.
I'm hired because I bring outside perspective and fresh eyes. I don't work for the company.
Right.
I will come in as an outsider and say, hey, I'm going to give you some good advice and some advice you're not going to like because I don't kind of care.
Right.
You are paying me to be critical, not just tell you, oh, everything's perfect. No, it's not. When I survey some of your team anonymously, you're going to find out things you knew and things you're like, oh my gosh, we never would have gotten that intel, that data, unless we brought someone from the outside.
Well, I noticed that when I have talked to you, you just kind of think when we used to have coffee, you know what, get your notebook, get your pad out, because I'm going to give you some ideas because, you follow me and you know me, what might work. And I'm always like, I didn't even think about it. Yeah, write that down. And then, when you leave here, have an action plan. And I really do appreciate that. But you could do that for some other business, just to sit and have a conversation. And I do think that people just want to be appreciated. Yeah. Even with this, they might have a small idea that somebody else in the organization could take it and run with, and never thought of that. Never thought of that. And you're like, oh, I have good ideas.
Pamela, here's the secret. I'll look in the camera. I'm in the reminding business. I share common sense. It's not 17 steps and 14 lead funnels with internet programs. That's not me. Simple blocking and tackling, human nature. Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is a lot of the core is simple, valuable, and important soft skills.
Right.
Soft skills. They mean the world.
All right. You want to get this book, so just share it with our audience. How do they reach you if they'd like to come in and do some training? Even just talk to the CEO, and you guys can make a connection and say, you know what, maybe you are the guy that we'd like to have come in and talk during our next, I don't know, board meeting or whatever. You don't understand.
The easiest way is to go to our main page, mindcapturegroup.com. So mindcapturegroup.com, and you'll find more information.
All right. And if you, Tony's book, Positive Disruption, you can find Value 1. Last year, volunteer, I don't think it ever goes out of style. Right? On this one, and it's small enough. I carry this around in my briefcase. I have one in my car because you're a dear friend and gave me a couple copies. And David has his. He's given his out for gifts. But this is a great book. It's full of quotes. Helps you self-reflect. Write some your thoughts down, and then an action plan daily.
The plan.
Right? And if you can get that done, maybe that'll be enough where you go, whew, at least I got that done.
There you go. Whatever it takes, keep pushing forward. Keep pushing forward.
All right, we want to thank Tony Rubleski for
being
here today.
Thank you
we
again.
want to wish you a wonderful 2023. I appreciate you being on my show, like I said, a couple years ago now. And we want you to be successful. We want you to connect with people. And I think people don't even realize that you live in our community because you came from your success from Vegas, brought it back home because you are from here. But what you can do for the local business, let's just roll in 2020. Let's have a positive disruption.
Amen. Thank you again, my friend.
All right, this is Pamela Keim from GRTV Media. Check out part 1 on the GRTV Media, and then part 2 that we are posting now to learn more about the positive disruption, Tony Rubleski, and what he can do for your business. Take care. Have a fabulous day.